Sup everybody, hope you're doing well. I was going to do a completely different video today. I haven't had much time to record videos lately, and there was a totally different topic I was going to do, but, I just got done watching this cringe video from a Breadtube channel, because that's what YouTube needs more of, Breadtube essayists. That's what we all need in 2025. We need more 24-year-old Shabascoy hipsters apologizing for their masculinity and talking about how they're the oppressors. We need more of this, okay? You need to be told that you need to do better. But one thing I noticed, because this is like a new Breadtube channel, one thing I noticed that he's doing, and they all do this, Xanderhole, Jimmy the Giant, Vosh to a certain extent, they all do this thing where they talk about how they used to be part of the alt-right pipeline. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of, back in the black pill days, people used to say that the black pill channels that had the deepest voices or the best looking creators would actually get the most number of followers, DBDR got a lot of followers because he had like a good voice for YouTube. That the ironic thing is that the people who talk about it the most are usually the people that are the most aesthetically pleasing to look at or listen to. And I sort of see it happening a little bit over at Breadtube, where it's almost like, in order to have some street cred as a Breadtuber, it's almost like it gives you more depth that you used to be on the right, because subconsciously they look at the right as being more, more masculine, more valid. It's like if you're a male content creator and you used to be on the right, they somehow subconsciously look at you as having more depth than if you were just like, some 13-year-old kid that became bread-pilled. Anyway, an interesting sort of phenomenon that I noticed is that a lot of these Breadtube channels, they actually became popular due to a viral video on their channel which would talk about how they used to be part of the alt-right pipeline. Okay, they all do this. Xanderhole, his most popular video that got him like a base on YouTube is talking about how he escaped the alt-right pipeline.
In the meantime, the day I'm recording this video is pretty close to the 8-month anniversary of me being a Breadtuber. If you were around for it, my debut on this side of YouTube was back in April when I released 2 videos telling the story of my political journey. I discussed how I went from being an apolitical liberal teenager to falling down a rabbit hole of hateful far-right content and social spaces that influenced my political views very heavily, and then of course how I got out of it. With all that said, hopefully you enjoy the remastered telling of how I fell down the alt-right rabbit hole and how I got out.
And it's not just Xanderhole. Every Breadtube channel I can think of talks about how they used to be part of the alt-right pipeline or how they used to be on the right in general.
Today we're going to talk about how I managed to escape the alt-right pipeline.
I was never a fan of his, even back when I was a reactionary.
From here, I was unknowingly put on a path that was not only right-leaning, but also, maybe unsurprisingly, very, very, very Christian.
Yeah, so this has been a minute. He's the guy that I'm going to be taking a look at. It was actually a video he made the other week about how he is at risk of being banned on Twitter, aka X, because he's a progressive, guys.
So we all know the app, formerly known as Twitter, is supposed to be a platform that promotes free speech. But how much free speech is actually tolerated when it's from a leftist perspective? Well, today, I'm on a mission to answer this question by posting strictly woke content to see how long it takes for my far-left account to get banned. But here's the thing. Throughout this experiment, my tweets will become progressively more, progressive.
It's just so ironic listening to these guys whinge that they're being deplatformed when they're not even being deplatformed. Let's keep it real. The idea that the left are being banned is just, it's ironic on so many levels. Anyway, let's take a look at this stupid video that Ben a Minute took out, okay? He is claiming that YouTube is recommending him alt-right content, okay? So this is like an experiment to see how long it's going to take before YouTube recommends alt-right content. Let's take a look.
YouTube has a lot of content to watch. Some of it is long, and some of it is short. Some of it is mild, and some of it is radical. Now, with this in mind, I was curious to see if watching only YouTube Shorts could speed up a descent into the alt-right political pipeline.
Okay, so I'm not trying to be mean or anything here. When I say it's a stupid video, I'm saying that his video is stupid, okay? I'm not trying to say that he's stupid. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but the points he's about to make are really, really dumb. Okay, first of all, he poses the question, how long will it take before the algorithm starts recommending him alt-right content? Well, the answer is never, because there is no alt-right content on YouTube, okay? The alt-right got banned off of YouTube between 2018 and 2020, alright? That's when all of the alt-right content creators, most of them got banned. The only alt-right content creators left on YouTube are archive channels or guys that kept their political opinions to themselves and just kind of, focus more on conservative politics rather than alt-right politics. Because like I said, they all got banned. In fact, there are channels on YouTube that have been demonetized because they invited these guys just on their show. Fresh and Fit got banned because they invited Fuentes on. It's like, bro, YouTube is not recommending alt-right content. But anyway, I'll let Ben a minute cook for a minute.
But before we get too far into this, we need to define what alt-right is. This is a hard thing to do, and the definition can be pretty subjective. So I brought a friend along to dive a bit deeper into this topic.
I think that there is a very strong parallel between sort of more far right-leaning sympathies and sort of the alternative history, alternative facts, sort of group. Now, I will say, and I think you made a good distinction with this at the beginning, that I want to avoid giving my own definition of what, the alt-right is or the far right is. Yeah. I think that's something that the viewers can kind of come up with on their own, unless you find a more standardized definition that isn't as subjective as what either of us would say. Sure.
Alright, so I'm just going to fast forward all of this because they're not going to give any definition of what the alt-right is. And the reason why they're not giving a definition of the alt-right is because it would completely undercut their video and deny them the ability to put alt-right in the title. If YouTube is recommending you alt-right content, if that's your hypothesis, then you should at least be able to define what the alt-right is or give some kind of understanding of it. Like I said, lots of Breadtube channels went viral at the very beginning by putting the video title, How I Escaped the Alt-Right Pipeline. And these newer Breadtube channels want to have their own viral video of how they escaped the alt-right pipeline. So maybe back in 2019 it would have actually been true, but there is no alt-right pipeline. But they want to pretend there is so they can have their little How I Escaped story.
And I think that kind of this correlation that we end up seeing between sort of alt history and sort of that alt-right pipeline is really this a combination of sort of anti-intellectualism as well as sort of this populist movement that has a really big distrust for any sort of authoritative body.
Yeah, but see, what he's talking about is conspiracy content, which there is a lot of on YouTube, ancient aliens and people who think that everything in the media is fake and whatever. But that's not really alt-right, and nor is it part of some alt-right pipeline. There's a lot of conspiratards out there, but that doesn't have anything to do with, the far right. But anyway, so I'm going to skip ahead a bit here because I can tell that you guys are bored already. I can just tell that people still listening to my video are probably trailing off, and I know it's brutally boring to listen to these guys. There's a part of me that's thinking, maybe I should just scrap this video because just debunking these guys is sending me to sleep. But, I want this on record. I want it on record that these, How I Escaped the Alt-Right Pipeline videos are just garbage, okay? I want to be on record as having said it. Anyway, let's just skip the main body of the video because it's mostly just filler, okay? His hypothesis in his big video, this long video that even on 2x speed was almost insufferable, his big premise is that he is going to create a VPN, go into incognito mode, and just peruse the YouTube algorithm, the shorts, until it starts promoting him alt-right content, okay? That's the video. That's the hypothesis of the video. Anyway, after 30 minutes of yapping, he finally, after watching hundreds and hundreds of YouTube shorts, all of it was just cooking videos and Christian videos, which he links to the alt-right. All of this different content that has nothing to do with the alt-right. He kept changing his location, to Texas and to Missouri, trying to get recommended right-wing content, and it just kept promoting him like general slop. And finally, after 1,000 shorts, he gets recommended a Charlie Kirk video, and this is his conclusion.
Yeah, after 243 New York shorts, we got the founder of Turning Point USA.
I should have known the religion shorts were going to bring us to something like this eventually. I just, yeah, this is it. Well, we got there.
If you aren't familiar, Turning Point USA is a nonprofit organization, and they advocate for far-right extremism.
What I've found through this journey is that there are enough videos on this platform to keep you watching for the rest of your life, plus give or take a few thousand years. And that's the thing. It really just comes down to keeping you here on this website for as long as possible. That's it. I'm not saying that's good or bad. That is objectively the point of the algorithm. It doesn't exist to teach you anything or help you in any way. It only exists to feed you content it thinks will make you stay here until you have to go do that other pesky thing called life.
Alright, so after a 37-minute video talking about how the YouTube algorithm is promoting alt-right content, and this is a follow-up video to another video he made that was just as long, he finally concludes that the algorithm is not promoting alt-right content, that it's just an accident of the algorithm to keep you engaged, and his definition of alt-right is Charlie Kirk, who's like a conservative Tea Party guy. You know, Charlie Kirk got into a fight with the alt-right. In fact, that's how I first heard of Charlie Kirk was, the very first time I ever heard of Charlie Kirk was in the context of him getting into a fight with the alt-right. Charlie Kirk is to the left of the alt-right. And that's how I first heard of him, because he got into a fight with the Grifters. Okay, he is on the right. Charlie Kirk is definitely a conservative, but he's like a pro-Israel, Tea Party, MAGA conservative. He's kind of a shill, is always the impression I got from him. He's kind of a glowy. Yeah, I don't know. I've kind of heard him speak like 3 times because I'm not an American, so his content doesn't really have any relevance to me. But the point is, this was Beneminet's magnum opus, right? This was his big video, part 2 of another huge video he made, trying to prove that the YouTube algorithm is promoting alt-right content. Couldn't name a single alt-right creator that it's actually promoting, and then backs off the point anyway.
The answer is, it doesn't lean anyway.
Yeah, completely.
It's going to show you videos that it thinks you're going to like, based off of like the traction that video has received before.
Why can't I afford to buy a home? How do I get a 6-pack? Who built the pyramids? Why don't I feel happy anymore? No matter which way you may lean politically, we all have the same questions. We all feel the same way. We're all experiencing this world together. The only difference, in my opinion, is that one political ideology, that being the far right, has successfully capitalized on answering these questions that we have.
Yeah, so didn't prove a thing, didn't get recommended a single alt-right content creator because there are none on YouTube anymore, and ended up kind of backpedaling on his own point anyway. So yeah, can we please put an end to the How I Escaped the Alt-Right Pipeline videos on YouTube put up by these leftists who clicked like on a Jordan Peterson video 5 years ago from before, back when Jordan Peterson was just giving lectures at a university. They might have watched one of them and thought it was a good video and clicked like on it. And then a few years later, they discovered that Jordan Peterson is like an anti-SJW. And they're like, oh man, I nearly became radicalized by Jordan Peterson. I know they're going to keep doing it. I know they're going to keep making videos about the alt-right because for some reason, YouTube promotes videos that debunk the alt-right because, I don't know, I guess the YouTube algorithm is not alt-right. But yeah, like I said, it's just very, very ironic listening to these left-wing Breadtube channels complain that they're being censored on social media when, for the best part of a decade, they were preening every time a right-wing channel got banned. I remember when Stefan Molyneux got banned, and Vosh did a video, and he was gleeful, he was dancing on Stefan's grave that he got banned off of YouTube, and he was bragging about how, the best way to deal with right-wingers is just to deplatform them, In fact, he even said, Vosh, that the reason why he doesn't debate right-wingers anymore is because there's no point. The only way to deal with the right, he said, is to do mass arrests. Which, by the way, if that's his opinion, You know, if he doesn't believe in free speech, if he just believes that speech is all about power dynamics, you know, that there's no such thing as free speech the way there's no such thing as a free lunch, that's fine, because there is an element of truth to that. But just don't come complaining when you're the one that gets banned. Anyway, like I've said a million billion times, politics, it's not that politics doesn't matter, it's just that it's kind of a cope for people who have nothing going on in their lives, okay? You know, I dip my toe into politics, you know, for the fun of it, but I tend to talk about people in it, you know, like people having emotional breakdowns because their candidate didn't win. I find the people side of politics more interesting than the actual politics. And you know, these Breadtube channels, they kind of, this is going to seem like a totally like out of left field thing to bring up, but for those of you who have watched me for a long time, you know I'm a fan of The Sopranos. It's probably my favorite fictional show. And there's a character in it called AJ Soprano, who's the son of the mob boss, Tony Soprano. And AJ is like, you know, the fictional lolcow of The Sopranos. You know, in every single Sopranos compilation, everyone's dunking on AJ because he's the original triggered SJW teenager. You know, he's the triggered, sulky, spoiled, you know, what they call a champagne liberal, right? Like a rich kid liberal. And everyone who's a fan of The Sopranos loves to dunk on AJ. But I remember reading a comment in one of the compilations. Someone did like an expose. They did like a deep dive into AJ's psychology. And I read a comment that was very true. They said, the reason why all of us guys like to dunk on AJ is because in a very real way, he reminds us of the worst elements of ourselves when we were younger. You know, he reminds us of all of the different personality traits that we've tried to stomp out as we've gotten older, right? And when I look at some of these Breadtube channels, it's like, oh man, you know, that could have been me, because I used to be like a liberal guy. I used to be a libtard when I was in my early 20s. You know, I used to watch the Young Turks, unironically. And when I look at these Breadtube channels and I see these cringe guys, it's like, oh man, that could have been me. And to be fair, for a while it probably was, but yeah. Anyway, I think I've made my point with this video. I think I've made the argument. You know, I've watched all of these videos. I've watched all of these different Breadtube channels that did these How I Escaped the Alt-Right videos. And every single one of them is just them talking about how, you know, before they became Breadtubers, before they became left-wing streamers or left-wing essayists, they used to be subscribed to Jordan Peterson guys. You know, before I became a leftist, I used to be subscribed to Jordan Peterson before he even became political. A lot of his lectures are on YouTube, and they actually had gone viral, I believe, before he even became popular. You know, like popular in politics, and some of these Breadtubers might have listened to one of his lectures and thought that it was really insightful, or maybe enjoyed some of Jordan Peterson's life advice videos, or, you know, maybe they used to be subscribed to Joe Rogan back when Joe Rogan was a little bit more kind of wishy-washy on his politics. Now, of course, they've unsubscribed, and they do these videos like, guys, I escaped the alt-right pipeline, but it's just total nonsense.